Good afternoon to you. I am Mark Sudduth in Wilmington, North Carolina, and it is Monday, the 6th day now of March 2023. And we got a lot to talk about today on the agenda. The abnormally warm Gulf, the Western Atlantic, all of that going to have big implications for the upcoming heart of severe weather season. I'll explain that and why I do believe this has hurricane season implications, especially considering we are talking about the Western Atlantic Basin. And of course, we'll talk about lower 48 weather. A little bit of severe weather, at least this week, looks pretty calm. And then I think the big story is towards the end of the week, in fact, I know it will be a big story, is the return of an atmospheric river event for the Golden State. That, of course, is California. The specter of flooding, I don't use that word a lot around here, specter, but yes, the specter of flooding does appear to be getting ready to be more prevalent as we head towards the weekend and beyond. All right? Thanks for joining in. Good to have you with me. Let's get started. First, taking a look at the Southern Oscillation Index, I want to draw your attention to the numbers here. They are going down. Look where we were in December. 18. January was 11. February is 10. Now the 30-day is down to 8. So we're gradually lowering the SOI values. You can see that even on the graphical output there. That's nice to see because it helps us to visualize what's happening with the pressure pattern across the tropical Pacific. And why that matters, if we go over to our nice map here of the INSO regions, what we are doing by lowering the overall SOI, it's part of the background state of everything. The SOI is not the key. It's one of the things we watch. But once it starts to lower, we start to get more of these westerly winds across the tropical Pacific through these what we call INSO regions, because the pressure pattern is changing to where the pressure is generally lower in the eastern Pacific, put a circle around it, than it is in the western Pacific, and of course the net flow of air, and again this is a very simplified version of this, becomes more westerly at the lower levels of the atmosphere, these so-called westerly wind bursts, and that helps to warm the Pacific abnormally. And we can start to see that now manifesting itself on some of the maps here, the anomaly maps. It's starting to really come together in the eastern Pacific. As you can see, warmer anomalies now along the equator, near the Galapagos, and then yet the central Pacific still holding on to those cool anomalies. So we're not racing towards El Nino, and we've got this, the very cold look to the northern parts of the Pacific out here, and we have the warm Gulf, the warm Western Atlantic, and even the tropical and subtropical Atlantic out here off the coast of Africa, all the way up to Iceland, really warmer than average as well. So nothing quite jumping out just yet, as we are 90 days or less, and we're on the or less side, less than 90 days from hurricane season in the Atlantic. Nothing really spells a real downturn in activity just yet. We're not having a screaming El Nino coming on. It's gradually getting there. The Gulf, the Atlantic still holding on to their warm anomalies. Water temperatures are on their way up because we are now headed towards spring and eventually summer. So I just think that we're going to have to hold off on passing judgment that the season is just going to be a down year. I think these warm anomalies near the coast, I talked about this last week, are a big factor as well. And especially June, July, early August. El Nino typically shuts down this part of the Atlantic Basin and the Caribbean. It has really little effect, no correlation to speak of on Gulf or Southwest Atlantic activity. So we're going to have to watch this closely. And, as I talked about in the thumbnail, what about spring severe weather? Well, all these warm anomalies in here, and that is ridiculous. Some of these anomalies right up against the coast, 3, 4, knocking on the door, 5 degrees Celsius above the long-term average, off the coast of the United States, the East Coast there, mid-Atlantic states. Ridiculous. And we've seen this in place year after year lately. But they just hang around, these warm anomalies, warmer than they should be. Well, why does this matter? Well, you get this warm, moist air getting pulled into the lower 48. These strong troughs come down. Your battle zone is in between over here. Or it could be a little bit farther to the south and east, as we see in Dixie Alley tornado outbreaks. The very warm water adds more energy, more heat, more precipitable water. The actual water content in the atmosphere is higher. And that has a big issue when it comes to the summer and hurricane season, because you could get a massive rain producer So, maybe the wind shear from an oncoming El Nino knocks down the intensities a little bit. Well, that's wind. We don't really have much of a problem with wind anymore because we're building stronger structures along our coast. But you still can't do anything about 3 feet of water in your house. Our houses are not impenetrable by water, so we need to keep that in mind. It could be a very wet hurricane season if it's not going to be a very windy hurricane season. The wet part, that's what I'm more worried about. All right, so looking ahead, the CFS continues to advertise a gradual shift towards a warm ENSO event right around the peak of the hurricane season, roughly right in here. The overall number, if you will, from the CFS for that 3.4 area, which, by the way, just real quick, that is this area right here. That's what we're talking about. So the CFS suggesting as we get towards September that we'd be just shy of a degree Celsius warmer than average. Just shy of that. If this holds, if it gets lower, if it gets higher, we'll have to wait and see. That's why we look at this once a week. But we're getting to within 90 days of the season starting now, so some of this stuff is going to start to come into play sooner rather than later. All right, so I showed you the anomalies. These are the actual temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, and this is ridiculous. Already 26 Celsius from the Florida Keys and points north towards mainland Monroe and parts of Collier counties, Naples, that vicinity, out into the central Gulf, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 Celsius, all around the Yucatan, and then of course the Northwest Caribbean and the Yucatan Channel, 26, 27 Celsius. We're talking low 80s in early March. It's not supposed to be this warm this early. Again, big implications for the upcoming severe weather, peak season months of April and May, maybe an end of June, and any early season tropical development that comes out of the Gulf. Maybe something heads towards Texas or Louisiana. Whatever the case may be, all that extra energy, all that extra moisture. Again, don't focus on wind category. What category is it? You need to be thinking impacts. This has the making of a big impact season, and it could just be one event. It could just be one. I know that only takes one, starts to sound old and used a lot, but it just matters for you, right? Again, I say that often. Be selfish when it comes to the weather. Ask yourself, well, how could this impact me? And I'm telling you, these warm water temperatures down there, they don't bode well for just normal weather. All right, let's expand it out, or at least shift east a little bit off of my neck of the woods. As I said, I'm in Wilmington over here. And if I had a boat and I drove out, boated or whatever, if I went, what do you call it when you're boating? You don't drive a boat. Maybe you do. Anyway, if you took that boat out into the Gulf Stream, it would be 80 degrees. I could jump off the boat, off that back little diving board or whatever. I'm thinking maybe yacht. That'd be great. The water temperatures would be about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's too early. Not in March. Yeah, we still have the cold shelf water. Oops, tried to draw on it there, but I hadn't had my tool ready. The cold shelf water is still prevalent, but the Gulf Stream and parts of the Southwest Atlantic over here, the subtropical North Atlantic, warm and warmer than average overall. That could have implications for spring nor'easter events. I know they have been few and far between this winter. The winter's not over, and even in late March we can get some nasty nor'easters, and that water temperature gradient there, the very warm water with the cold atmosphere that could still come in. Yes, we could get some big storms between now and the end of the winter season. All right, so looking at the lower 48 as well as Alaska and Hawaii. I tell you what, it's good to see Hawaii blank. I don't mention Hawaii much. It's not on purpose. It's just most of the activity occurs in the lower 48 that we pay most of the attention to. But in recent weeks, it's called a Kona low. They've had snow at very low elevations in Hawaii, a lot of rain, but at least lately things are nice and calm. And Alaska, kind of the same way. I don't ignore Alaska on purpose. It's just most of the people that are into the weather live in the lower 48. But it is good to see pretty much all 50 states nice and calm as we start the week. However, that won't be the case as we end the week, and I will show you why. Let's go over to Fox Weather real quick. California enduring heavy weeks? No, just several weeks. Try again, Mark. California has endured weeks of heavy rain and mountain snow. I was out there in January to cover some of that, and it's about to add another week as more storms loom over the next several days. And I'll show you this on the GFS. It's going to get wild again. This is the precipitable water anomaly product from Tropical Tidbits. The greens down here, these are above normal in your PWAT, your precipitable water. There's some of your subtropical moisture out here. But right now, it's starting off today. Most of the lower 48 and a good deal of Canada, the precipitable water values are below normal. But as we move through the week, that changes. Let's just scoot this out. 24, 48 hours there. Storm system moving into the southern tier. And look, you can see that moisture plume cutting across Mexico into the southwestern United States, the southern plains region. Not enough warm, moist air coming out of the Gulf and cold, dry air coming down to create a big battle zone in here. That's a good thing because it's coming in April and May. But yeah, that's the makings of it. That's that precipitable water I was telling you about. There it is. And some of it's kind of on the high side. But watch what happens out west as we get to Thursday and into Friday. Look at those blues, and then on the sort of the north end of the scale, as it were, those ridiculous values out west. We'll rewind the clock a little bit there. That right there, that's a lot of precipitable water relative to the overall, that's why they're called anomalies. We're talking several standard deviations above the long-term averages out there. Really, really wet is what this shows. A wet pattern for the west. Also probably warmer this time around. So instead of 30 inches of snow, there could be more rain, and that could cause a lot of flooding, especially on top of 20 to 30 feet plus of snowpack. 1997 saw some significant flooding in California, parts of it, as did 2005 coming out of the Sierra. So we're going to have to watch this closely. I'm going to get in touch with Fox Weather a little bit later today via email. Of course, I work with them and might be making plans to head out there to cover this in person as we get through the next several days. And I mean, look, this is why. Let me get a different color here to make it pop. Look at that. This is your quantitative precipitation forecast, or QPF, from the Weather Prediction Center over the next week. We're talking well above normal and just well above any kind of like rational thinking of rain and precip overall. Ridiculous. 4, 5, 10, 15 inches of rain. Absolutely mind-numbing out here. I've said all winter at how good this is overall. We need the moisture. Now we're starting to get too much of a good thing. And look, I don't want to ignore, too, the fact that parts of the Ohio, what is that, the lower Mississippi, mid-Mississippi Valley, not the Ohio Valley, so we'll just use states. That makes it easier for me. Arkansas, Tennessee, that area, all right, parts of the Mississippi Valley, and contributing tributaries. We could see some heavy rain across this region as well. And let's just not forget, as I say with hurricanes, that it's all about the impact. Tornadoes, hail, those get headlines. Those moderates, high risk for severe weather. But rain and water is an incessant, quiet, penetrative. It kills people with too much water. It gets in your house, your business, and water is very difficult to battle against. You can hide from hail, you can run from tornadoes, you can hide from the wind, but massive storm surges, too much rain, raging rivers, there's just not much you can do. The water made the Grand Canyon. That's all you need to know, all right? If it can do that, it can cause problems for us. So pay attention to kind of wrap this segment up. Here in parts of the Mid-South and out west over the next several days, water seems to be the biggest problem going forward. At least in the severe weather department, very little in the way of convective activity today. The same for tomorrow. A little marginal risk there in parts of Texas and Oklahoma, but nothing out of control, at least yet. I really do. I fear for April and May. I think we're going to have a big tornado season this year, a return to what we have seen in prior years. We've had several years where it's been down. I think that's going to change. And a big part of that, as I said earlier, sorry to rehash this again, but that warm Gulf of Mexico, beware. April and May, I believe it'll be pretty active. But at least this week, not so much so, just marginal here as we get out towards Wednesday. All right? All right, let's get back to the title page so that I can sign off and get this online for you. We'll be watching all of this. Like I said, I might be going out west to California. I just got to coordinate with my friends over at Fox Weather, figure out what we could do, what's the story, all that kind of stuff. It's expensive. It's a big area to cover. We got to figure it all out, so we'll see. But as long as you're aware of it, that's part of my job here, is to keep you up to date on what's going on. All right? All right, that is it from me for today. As always, thank you for tuning in. I am Mark Sudduth. That's me. Hurricane Track. We're on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share. You know the drill. It's great to have you along with us. I appreciate it. I'll be back with you next week, if not sooner.